So the patch that's slowly fading away right now is called Malty Glitches. And I began this patch as an exploration of the beer glitch algorithm on the Empress Reverb. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the patch is made before I jump into the controls and some of the things that I changed. So when I listen to that patch, the patch is characterized by a glitch that occurs when the signal passes back and forth between two filter networks. One is a low-pass filter, the other is a high-pass filter. And when I heard that, what I immediately heard, and what I think is the star of this algorithm of this patch, is not a reverb and it's not a filter. It's, in fact, a probability gate, which I've talked about before, and people have asked, what's a musical application for this? Because I think, it's a little bit hard to grasp the ways in which something where it's just flipping a coin, that's what a probability gate does, can be applied musically. And I think that happens in the Empress beer glitch. I think it happens in this patch. So what is a probability gate? Basically, you have a RNG, a random module, and it goes into a comparator. And comparators are great for analyzing the state of things and taking something complex and reducing it into a 0 or a 1, or sometimes a -1. That's an option. But we're not going to talk about -1 today. We're going to talk about 0 and 1. And the way that this works is that there's a clock, which is this LFO, and the LFO's rate goes back to the front page in something called the glitch rate. And it feeds into a random module, which keeps spitting out random numbers each time the clock goes high. And it feeds those into a comparator. Then you have another control called the glitch tone. It's called thing 2 in the Empress algorithm. And that determines whether the comparator is more likely to go high. And if it goes high, then it will pass through the high-pass filter network. And if it goes low, it will pass through the low-pass filter network. And what it's doing is comparing this static value against these constantly fluctuating random values. So it takes that output, and from there, when it's low, it goes through a series of panners. If you see, they're going from 0 to 100%, and one of them feeds into, lo and behold, a low pass, and the other one feeds into a high pass. These are filters connected in series to give a steeper slope, because I wanted to have a sharper distinction between high and low pass. But this is a musical way of applying that random quality so that it becomes something that plays along with you. It's not predictable. It changes each time, but it changes within parameters that you control. So yeah, the reverb goes, which is a plate reverb, goes into this panning situation, and the pan determines whether it passes through the high pass network or the low pass network, and everything's doubled because it's in stereo. And then it goes back out to a tone control. And the big change that I made, and The reason why I think sometimes it's more important to be inspired by something than to try to absolutely clone it is that I added this module, which is a CV filter. And what this allows is if I adjust this control, which is called glitch glide, what will happen is that it will pan between those two networks slowly. So it won't go from 100% to 0% and back and forth. It'll transition between the two, and this can create sort of phasing sounds. And sounds that never quite settle on one value or the other. And I think if I had tried to accurately clone the beer glitch, I would have been disappointed, because if you've ever heard an Empress reverb, they're fantastic pedals. And one of the things that they do well is introduce a lot of modulation and detuning, and they sound really thick. And ZOIA can do that sort of thing, but I think its real strength is in creating flexible approaches to controlling things. So in order to have the sort of distinctions that I wanted, the opportunities that this patch affords that I'm going to talk about in just a second, I would have had to sacrifice a lot. And even then, you always end up in this situation where you're, comparing a nuanced algorithm that took who knows how long to develop against, something that no matter how much time I put into it, and I put time into my patches, I don't have months to spend developing them and fine-tuning them and, having people beta test them and all of that sort of thing. But instead, what I focused on was ZOIA's strengths rather than, creating this false comparison. And that is flexibility. So, the Empress sounds great. But one thing that it can't do that I'm just about to demonstrate is this. Take the glide down just a little bit. If the glide's too high, then it doesn't distinctly transition. So these two stomp switches control whether or not the low pass or high pass network fluctuates its frequency randomly. So now I just have the low pass fluctuating, and every time that it goes through the low pass network, slow this down a little bit more. It has sort of a stepped filter quality, and I can individually select them. And I can determine their range too. The range for the low pass, it goes between whatever the low pass's frequency is set to and 27 hertz, so really low. And with the high pass, it goes between whatever the high pass frequencies set to and 24,000 hertz, which is very, very high. But you can utilize these in different ways. So the other advantage here is that you have controls over the filters that you don't have in the Empress. So you can adjust the low pass frequency and the high pass frequency. You can move them around. You can have them overlap. And you can adjust the resonance too, which will give you a more percussive sound. And combined with the glide control, you can get these sort of constantly shifting filtered reverb sounds that, again, you can't get with the beer glitch mode. So just to walk through the controls real quickly, I've talked about these. These set the frequencies for each filter. These lights come on when the stomp switches are selected, and these select the range. So the larger the range, the closer this one will go to 0, or 0 in CV, but 27 hertz, which is really thuddy. I like to keep this one in particular really close to the frequency that it's set to, but you can play around with that. Up here we have 2 different decays. In the original Empress, pressing the left stomp switch will cause it to freeze. I don't really like frozen reverbs. If you set this all the way to 1, it'll freeze, just like the Empress will. If you set this to 1, but if you roll it back just a little bit, what will happen, and the light changes color to show which decay it's using. If you roll it back just a little bit, you get these, reverbs that are almost frozen. So they decay after a really long time, which I think gives you the same sensation, but it also allows the reverb to become uncluttered after a time, and for the sound to evolve. Whereas I think frozen reverbs, they can get too busy and, but if you really like frozen reverbs, just set this to 1. Or you can set it to a really short decay and a medium decay, or whatever 2 decay settings you want. This is a wet-dry mix. And here you have the controls that would have been called thing 1 and thing 2. This is the glitch rate, which is the speed with which it transitions back and forth. And there's a little pixel here that just shows when it switches states from 0 to 1. And the glitch tone determines whether or not it favors the high pass network or the low pass network. Right around middle will be 50-50 odds. As you turn that up or down, it will favor one or the other. And then down here you have dampening controls, so you can boost or cut the high or low frequencies at the output, which can really help with some of the filter settings if they get too thuddy, or if they get too, with some of the high pass settings, they can get very sharp, metallic. So that's Malty Glitches. And I, in particular, like a setting like this where only one of the filters is randomly modulated, and the glide is set high, because then it provides sort of this filter, the low pass filter, provides sort of a static point of reference that the high pass filter is always passing back and forth from. and the glitch rate and glitch glide interact quite a lot. So then I thought, well, okay, this is a pretty cool idea. What if I take it and apply it to a delay? So across the bottom we have the same controls, high pass, low pass, the same random modulation thing, resonance again. This is slightly different. Here we have a clock divider, which is related to the tap tempo that the delay uses. So you can set it so that the glitch happens, really fast in comparison to the tap tempo, or really slow, so that repeats come in sort of different flavors. Got this set pretty high. So the controls up here are just delay controls, feedback, mod rate and mod depth, and then a wet dry mix. And then this control is what's called the glitch mix. It mixes the unaffected delay signal with the filtered signal. Because I found that when I passed it through wholly, it would sort of eradicate the sense of repeats happening. It would sound really cool. You get these cool glitchy filter sounds, but it would lose the distinction of the repeated note that an echo delay has. So I added that control so you can balance them out a little bit. And then I thought, well, this is also really cool, but what if I don't know, applied it to a fuzz? So this is Malty Fuzz. This one, the foot switches function a little bit differently. This one is an on-off for the fuzz. This is a boost. It comes before the fuzz, so when there's no fuzz, it acts much more like a volume boost. But when the fuzz is on, it boosts the volume, but it also acts as an additional gain stage. So you could set the fuzz pretty low. I've set it to 0 on the input gain. Input gain, output gain. And then you can use the boost as sort of a different fuzz setting to crank it up when you want to. And then the mix here is a mix between the dry signal and the filter path, which if I'm sorry, the unaffected signal and the filter path. So it's not a wet-dry mix per se, because there, it's not like a blend control for the fuzz, but it's a blend control for how much of the fuzz or the clean signal passes through the filter network. And then, some familiar, at this point, controls down here. And also since this is used for a boost, this is used as an on-off for the modulation. So when it's off, there's no random modulation, and you can turn, these become push buttons, and you can turn them on and off for each individual one you want, and then use this foot switch to activate. Which one you want to use. And I wanted to have it set up in this signal chain so that if you wanted to use this filtering idea on anything, because you don't have to use the fuzz, you can pass whatever signal you want through these filters and explore that possibility for modulation. And also on a dry signal, I find that when you turn the glide up really high and mess around with the filter settings, you can get these really sort of subtle movements. That I think are kind of nice. You can make it a really sort of subtle effect that just adds a sense of slight phasing, slight filtering, but mostly movement, something going on to a sound without it becoming overburdening. And so those are the Malty glitch-based patches I've come up with, and a little bit about how they're made and what I like about them and some of the different ways you can use them. So I hope you enjoy them. Thank you.